feel like I'm out of practice.
Good afternoon. I am calling to order the Thursday, December 15th meeting of the Finance Committee of the Town of Nantucket. Just a first announcement that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. And with that, I'm going to look for an approval of the agenda.
So second.
Thank you. It's going to be by roll call because Jill Veith is online. So Joanna?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Jill. Denise,
But you
aye.
can't see me, right? You just hear me?
We can hear you.
We can't see you.
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm now going to open the meeting to public comment. To anyone who wants to make a comment about anything except for the citizen warrant articles, which will come up later in the agenda. Maria, is there anybody online with a hand raised? Seeing no hand raised, I'm going to close the public comment section. Okay, I am looking for any changes or edits to the meeting minutes of November 15th. Seeing everyone shaking their head here, none. Jill, do you have any?
No, thank you.
Okay, then may I have a motion to approve in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Joanna?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So now I'm opening up the public hearing on citizen warrant articles. And let me just frame some ground rules for us as we do this. What I will do is I'll call out each article. All zoning articles and the sewer article are actually motion or recommendations are made by the planning board and the sewer commission. So while if anyone would like to speak to any of those articles tonight, of course they can because it's a public hearing. However, we will not be entering into any deliberations or debates about them because those articles come to us after our colleagues in the sewer commission and the planning board make their recommendations as to those articles. So I will start with Article 1, Curtis Barnes, Town Council form of government. And Curtis, I can see you in the audience. Thank you for being our audience. And would you like to share with us the thought behind your article and why you're proposing it?
Indeed, I'm Curtis Barnes, and I am proposing this article. Quite frankly, I think that we have outgrown open town meeting, and it's time for a more professional approach to management. My proposal to do that is to look at the option of a town council form of government. And I did consult with town council about this article. Very specifically, it is not giving you the roadmap yet. I think it's very important that we have time to discuss and consider the ramifications. So my article is to appoint a committee to review the idea of a town council and or other options at that time. I do want to tell you that I have submitted several papers. I don't know if you've received these, but the International City Council Managers Association, which authored both of the papers, points out that the majority of government in any town over 2,500 people in the United States is a council form of government. We who nurtured ourselves in New England with town meetings, small towns, they all grew up. And now you're seeing more and more towns in Massachusetts switching to the form of government. So I have indicated, I believe that I think it's a more efficient form of government. It lets the council acts as the legislative body. That means that you can take action in a relatively short time. And the model that I used was the Barnstable Town Council, which has 13 members, which may need because it's a bigger town. My proposal is for 9. I am suggesting that should accommodate geographic distribution, so various areas are represented. I also think it's important to look at the various economic elements within the community. And so many of us on boards are people who are retired and have the time. There are people who aren't retired, may not even have the time. And I think we see that at town meeting because so few people who are working find themselves able to come with babysitters and other concerns. So my feeling is that the approach that we've taken in my proposed article gives us both the opportunity to discuss it very thoroughly within the community. I served on the town government study committee for 2 years. We submitted a number of recommendations that are still sitting at the legislature, but eventually I hope that we will get them through. So I think that's a model that would work very, very well. I just, as an aside, I know there is another article for a charter change. And one of the concerns that I have is my article, or the town council form that I'm proposing or suggesting we look at, has a professional administrator. The other article is talking about a paid mayor. And I'm suggesting to you, you cannot have two bosses. You've got to have the person that you want in there. I also did put in a provision for expenses because I know people are going to have those expenses, and the stipend that the select board now gets is very inadequate. The stipend in Barnstable is $8,000 per counselor, and the chair gets 12 or 13. So I hope that we can move this article forward at town meeting, establish the appropriate group to review it, and then we'll bring it back to the next town meeting for action.
Thank you, Curtis. Questions from Peter?
Just a couple quickies. The professional administrator, would that be like a town manager in your thought?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Professional town manager, they're, I mean, they have them, they're all over the place. And I mean, Libby is our town manager right now.
Right.
I actually put the article into town meeting a number of years ago to change her job to town manager because I felt we needed someone who could do that kind of job. But, you know, Libby is someday going to retire, believe it or not. And at that time, there are associations of professional managers qualified and ready to serve.
Curtis, would you be willing to combine your article with the other article, work together with them to come up with one article?
Interestingly enough, when the article came out in the Ink and M about the two citizens' articles, the first thing I did was reach out to them and said, we ought to get together. We should not be discussing two articles on town meeting floor. And I have not heard one word back from them. Someone has suggested a person who works with both of us that she could put us together. The answer is yes, of course I will work, because I don't have an agenda here. I am talking about the betterment of the town of Nantucket, a more efficient management system. And one of the illustrations that I've used is the airport gets an opportunity for a federal grant. They have to go to town meeting to get approval to accept it, and the grant disappears. And that has happened several times in the past couple of years. I'm a water commissioner. We are an independent commission. We have the need to purchase supplies now that are very short. Plumbing and supplies for the water department are hard to get. We have a reserve retained earnings. We have to go back to town meeting to get the authority to use the retained earnings to buy the stuff, and we miss the opportunity. So I'm just saying it's time for us to grow up, and I think we can do it. But to answer your question, I do think in the process that I'm proposing, the opportunity to work together is there. That article, I believe, is a copy of the Charter of Franklin. And by the way, when it came out, I read it, and there are inaccuracies in the translation of that. The numbers are wrong. They were just picked up. So, but yes, I would be most happy to work with them and to have all of us work with them.
Terrific. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Right.
Jeremy?
I was going to say something very similar, that we really need to figure out how to get these two things together. And town council yesterday spoke a lot about they have open office hours and they've worked with people on this. Is there a way to use them as a mediation to pull all this together?
I've talked with town council about my article and followed town council's recommendation in bringing the study committee forward instead of, as you know, the town council has said the other article is not appropriate at the moment. But the answer is yes. Of course, I think John is fantastic, and I love to work with him. But you know, we all got to pull it together and get it approved so we can get that going.
John, are you online? Are you?
I am, Denise. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, John.
Hi, John. So what's the best way forward to bring two groups together to get a better message? I don't know the answer.
Well, so the finance committee doesn't do that, right?
Okay.
So we don't rewrite citizen warrant articles. So people write them. They used to, as Curtis did, he sat down with town council when they had open hours to make sure his article was legally effective or not legally deficient, I guess. And occasionally, very, very rarely, if there's an article that if we were to adjust it, last year's fertilizer article comes to mind, where we did actually make a comment and a recommendation based on town council's advice in order to potentially have this be a more effective article. But typically, we do not, it's not finance committee's role. Our role is to, make a recommendation on what we believe is the right for the town in respect of what's in the article. And that does not preclude Curtis and the article sponsor of, let's see, I think it's Article 6. Let me check. Yeah, Jeff Carlson's the single name, but there's actually 4 of them. There's no reason that Curtis and the group for Article 6 couldn't work together and on the meeting of town floor say, we support Article 1, we'll pull Article 6, or Article 6 is legally defective, so that, that might end up being where it goes. So John, I'll stop talking and let you say something that's correct.
Thank you, Denise. Everything you said, by the way, was absolutely correct. So that's just for the record. I think the comment I made last night was that you're changing the charter to a town council form of government is obviously a very big step to take. There are a lot of very significant policy and technical issues that have to be addressed. My thought is that the best way to accomplish that would be for town meeting to approve the appointment of a committee to really sit down and spend the time deliberating on what would be best for the town. I think that given, Mr. Barnes mentioned issues about consistency with the existing charter, I certainly share those same concerns because of some of the unique provisions that you have already in your existing charter. So I think the town would be very well served to appoint a committee, probably look at an appropriation to support that committee's work in terms of professional consulting services. None of us are Thomas Jefferson or John Adams, and we can just sit down some night and write. Which one wrote the Declaration of Independence? I know there's a dispute about that, but obviously the Constitution as well. You have to take a lot of care. You have to have a lot of public input, a lot of professional help. And I think Mr. Barnes's article would be going in the right direction. I don't share the same feelings about Article 6. Because not only is it legally defective, and would it be okay, Denise, if I talk about that now in conjunction
Yeah,
with
please go ahead. Please, John, go ahead.
Article 1? Thank you. So the issue I see with Article 6 is there's a very fundamental flaw in the article. You cannot simply have town meeting vote to adopt a new charter that changes the form of government. There are only two ways you can do that. One is by the election of a charter commission at the annual town election. And that charter commission sits down and writes your charter. It's reviewed by the Attorney General, and then it is presented to the voters at an annual election on an up or down vote. That's a pretty cumbersome process. The other alternative would be to write a charter as a home rule petition, which if approved at town meeting would go to the legislature for enactment. And most likely the legislature would want to see a provision in that charter for a ballot question at the end of the process, so that the voters have the final say in adopting the new charter. But I don't see a path forward on Article 6 in its current form. And I certainly wouldn't recommend just going ahead and approving that without a much more robust debate about what should be in that charter. There are a lot of issues. I don't think it's appropriate to have that discussion on town meeting floor through, multiple amendments. We'd spend a very long time at town meeting, and I can guarantee you that the result would not be satisfactory. That's just the way the process works. So I would encourage the town to really get behind Curtis's article if in fact you think you want to explore going to a town council form of government. Obviously, that's the fundamental question. But if you do, I think the appointment of a committee and then with the advice of counsel and professional consultants, we could draft up something probably in the form of a home rule petition and proceed from there.
Thank you, John.
Question for John. John, so in your experience, what is the time frame that the towns that have converted, is it a 1-year process, a 2-year process, a 3-year? I mean, what should a reasonable expectation for the voters of the town be if which either path? How long does it take to go from town meeting to town council?
Well, let's assume for a moment that you were to elect a charter commission at this upcoming May election. The commission, excuse me, I'm sorry, commission has 18 months to go through that process and then present a final report, which would then go on the ballot at the next annual election. So you're looking probably at a good 2-year process. If you went the home rule petition, you would approve that at the May annual town meeting. It would go to the legislature, and then the town has an awful lot of home rule petitions that have been pending for a long time. The general court is very busy. I think there are some pretty complex and politically charged issues associated with some of those home rule petitions. I think as long as the charter is written properly, it would be less controversial, but I would, and assuming that they put on a requirement for a ballot question, I think you're probably talking 2 years. So I think the process would be about the same. I think you should count on a 2-year process either way.
Okay, just another question.
Yes, go ahead.
And John, the reason that Mr. Barnes' article is in better form is he's proposing the creation of this committee to then go through the process you've described, as opposed to Article 6, which kind of says here's a template, just adopt our template for a town council form of government, which is which is not an appropriate form.
Yes. In addition to not being in the appropriate legal form, I think it would be very ill-advised of the town to just adopt something by, yes, there could be finance committee discussions about it, but you have a very busy agenda between now and town meeting. And I would be concerned that the appropriate amount of time to really study and evaluate what form of government you want is really not the role of the finance committee. It should be an advisory committee set up for that purpose.
And it does,
That was actually going to be my question, John. I know that we've had a town government study committee numerous times, and I know that they've looked at this issue. And what was the outcome or the recommendations? Because, I think this came up at the select board meeting maybe last week.
And the week
about-
before.
Yes, the one before about reconstituting that committee and bringing them back and potentially looking at some of these things.
I'm on it.
Yeah, Curtis is on the town government.
So where are we with that?
Well, the committee is still in existence, and without speaking for them, I know informally that the majority of them support my proposal strongly.
Thank you.
May I make a comment to part of what you're saying?
In 1 second, Curtis,
Yes,
because I want to
ma'am.
let Jeremy had a question. So,
Of course.
Jeremy?
I was curious, John, is it possible that a new committee or this existing committee can do work between now and the annual meeting in May
No.
to make some progress? So the select board cannot just start this. You need to wait for the full town meeting to start this process?
So the select board did discuss this 2 meetings ago, and Brookmore did actually propose, why can't we just get started on this now? Why do we have to wait for the town meeting to decide if Article 1 should be implemented? And the consensus was, and John, you were there, so again, you can happily correct me, but the consensus was they wanted to let the voters decide if they wanted to proceed with working on this rather than jumping the gun and just starting to work on it now. So that was what the discussion was, correct, Curtis?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, Libby?
Hi, thank you. Sorry. I just wanted to, I think what you said, Denise, is accurate. The committee, however, is not in existence. It was dissolved when their report was submitted. The report is online and it's by law reestablished every 5 years. So it hasn't been 5 years yet, although the board has discussed reestablishing a group to look at form of government and open versus representative town meeting most recently. But you're right, since the citizen warrant articles were submitted, they decided to wait and see what the outcome at town meeting is before pursuing either one of those.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know we were dissolved. But
Curtis is still actively
I'm gonna
working every day.
volunteer.
He's wondering why nobody else was in
That's
the
right. No
room.
wonder the meeting room was always empty.
My comment is that in order to get resources, as John mentioned, Mass Municipal has people qualified and ready to come in and assist towns like Nantucket in doing this kind of thing. So I would start with Mass Municipal, and then the International City Council group that authored these papers that I gave you also is available.
Thank you, Curtis. So I think what we'll do is we'll draw a line under Article 1 for tonight, because we will invite you back when the rest of the committee members are in attendance, and then we'll have a more thorough deliberation, and then we'll probably make a recommendation. This will be sometime in January. I'll send you an email, as I've been doing, I'll send you an email saying, can you please appear on this day? And we can continue our
answer is yes.
discussion. I know, you're always very responsive and very helpful. Thank you. So might as well keep standing.
Yep.
Article 2,
Yep.
Independent Sewer Commission. And as I said at the outset of this meeting, we will wait till the Sewer Commission and Town Administration has a chance to put together their thoughts on this before we would deliberate it at length. But you are more than welcome if you want to give us a brief overview as to why you put this in.
Thank you. I serve on the Water Commission, which is an independent commission. And we are in a position to move quickly and directly on problems and concerns dealing with the waters. As of late, both water and sewer have been digging up the roads together, and David Gray and Mark Willett work very, very closely together. And it just seemed to me that having an independent sewer commission would give that group the same flexibility that we have as a water commission to make decisions and move more directly on problems of concern. And I've talked with David, and he very much would like that. Right now, the sewer commission is a subset of a subset of a subset of the select board. And, they've got so much on their plate, as you know, these days. So it just occurred to me that let's try it. Let's see if it made sense. And so that's why I submitted the article.
Thank you. Any questions about that? I mean, again, we always wait until we hear back from different affiliated parties before we discuss it in detail, but did anybody want to ask a question?
I had one question.
Go ahead.
On this. Certainly last night at the select board, they discussed the fact that you really have single issue mentality or perspective, which a sewer board may have, versus a more global holistic view that the select board may have. And that seems like that has some merit. And I wondered if you'd given any thought to that.
As I say, I serve on the Water Commission. And if you know, Mark Willett comes and reports to the select board periodically. But with the kinds of things that are going on with all the construction, it was an idea that a model that works well on the water side might work well on the sewer side. I'm very open to discussion. It was a suggestion. I'm much more interested in town government study committee and town council. If I have to put my chips in one of those baskets.
Thank you, Curtis. Any other questions for Curtis?
Jill has her hand raised.
Okay, Jill?
Yes, hi Curtis. Thanks for coming and talking to us. I wanted, if for some reason we moved forward with your form of council, do you even need a water and sewer commission, or could they serve as the water and sewer commission?
I can't answer the question, but I know when I look at the Barnstable model that I've attended, I met with their town council and discussed some of these things. They still have zoning board, planning board, and it may turn out that them being the sewer commissioner is fine, but I can't answer that question right now. I think we need to take a look at it.
Libby, is there, do you have any insight into that?
Not particularly. The as my John might have more than me, but my understanding is that the commissions would remain standalone whether there's a town council or not.
No, I meant if there could be a combined sewer and water commission.
Oh, we have talked about that actually kind of recently. And I suppose that's a possibility, but the water commission, I think, is, I'm not sure that's the model. I mean, I don't know. It's really a policy issue.
Okay.
David Gray reports to town manager right now. The water department manager does not report to the town manager. So, you know, there's a reporting issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Curtis.
What's that?
Nice to see you. Thanks for being our audience, our in-person audience. Okay, so
I'm
Article
sorry.
3.
Denise, if I
You have to
may,
stay.
So I'm sorry, John, were you speaking?
yeah, I'm sorry, Denise, if I wanted to make two quick points.
Please.
As you know, the select board currently serves as the Nantucket Sewer Commission.
Yeah.
Curtis's article would create an elected separate commission.
Mhm.
There always is the option for an appointed separate commission, and that would be a decision for town meeting to make. And then, secondly, I had mentioned that if the finance committee is interested and is going to recommend this, we should probably put some transition language, which I think would be within the scope, as to how those new commissioners would be either elected or appointment over what period of time. I think that would be a relatively simple item to add to any positive motion under this article.
Okay, thank you, John. Good.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Curtis.
I did submit some additional information
Yes.
in response to that, so that is available.
We do have that. Thank you, Curtis.
Okay,
Yes.
just checking.
Yeah, I read everything you send me. Just keep that in mind, Curtis. Okay, Article 3, bylaw amendment, motorized devices. I think Bruce is online. Maria, is that true?
Yes.
So, hi, Bruce. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, we're not going to be making motions tonight because we still have to get information from other sources, but you're more than welcome to present your article and give us some highlights as to what it will accomplish. And then we will invite you back for another meeting to have a more in-depth discussion. So I will turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I'm going to follow the outline that you sent out by email as best as I can. And I'll start out by saying that the citizen warrant proposes to amend Chapter 98 of the Town Code for only 2 safety-related purposes. The article leaves the currently existing language of the chapter unchanged. No language is proposed to be deleted. Only the highlighted items shown in the proposed amendments would be inserted, and I've sent you guys copies of properly highlighted article, along with the responses to the 6-question FinCom questionnaire, and I've sent you some photo collages. But the intent is to equate bike paths, which are now being also called multi-use paths, with sidewalks, because they're now used for the same pedestrian purposes. The bike paths are more recently being referred to as the multi-use paths because people are using them where there are no formal sidewalks. The bike paths are increasingly being used by people walking, jogging, pushing baby strollers, nerder travelers as they walk and wait at the bus stops and things like that. So the essence of the proposed amendment is to provide the same level of safety that we enjoy on sidewalks to the bike paths and the multi-use walking paths because of the increasing use of medium and high-speed motorized devices on the bike paths. Now, Chapter 98 currently prohibits from the sidewalks, and only the sidewalks, only a motorized scooter, it's a 2-seated device, a motorized skateboard, and a Segway. Now, at the time the chapter was entered into the code, those were the only motorized devices to be concerned with at the time, apparently. Now, the world of motorized personal devices has expanded to include various speed e-bikes, motorized mopeds, 1-seat devices, one-wheel devices like rollerboards, unicycles, self-balancing scooters, razor boards that have the handlebars and the throttle controls on them. And we currently have bicycle riders and bicycle racers. We've got gas-powered scooters and other motorized devices using our roads as well as the bike paths. Many of the bicycle racers travel on the roads at speeds of 30 miles an hour or higher. And many of the mopeds and scooters that are on the roads that are rented, they travel at a regulated speed of 20, so they can't really exceed that, but they're on the roads. But privately owned mopeds and scooters are capable of much higher speeds. Now, most of the personal motorized devices that are highlighted in the article travel at speeds between 20 and 40. And those are the same speed limits on almost every road on the island. So these bicycles and bike racers and gas-powered vehicles are supposedly now excluded from traveling on sidewalks for safety concerns about those vehicles hitting people who are walking on the sidewalks. The same safety standard ought to apply to any powered motorized device, whether on bike paths or sidewalks. So these two issues of equating the sidewalks with pedestrian uses and updating the list of motorized personal devices are the only amendments that are being proposed to Chapter 98. It's meant to make the drivers and operators of these vehicles aware of the safety issues. Now, people are being hit on the bike paths by these devices, including myself and my 4-year-old granddaughter, causing injuries. Now, being hit or grazed by even the slowest of these motorized devices at a speed of 15 to 20 miles an hour, according to our PCP that I took our granddaughter to get her chin stitched up, he said it's like getting hit by an NFL linebacker running at 20 miles an hour. Now, only a few of our roads have bike paths. Some of the roads on the island also have sidewalks, and there's informal paths along the side of them. But currently, these electric powered devices that are highlighted already operate on these roads or sidewalks, as well as on the bike paths. And as far as I can research, there have been no reports of accidents where a unicycle, a razor board, or anything that has been involved in a crash with a car or a truck. And according to my research, the town apparently doesn't keep readily accessible records about these motorized vehicles causing injuries on the bike paths. But because I walk on them every day as part of the chemo protocol, I know there have been brushbacks because I've been hit. So that's the, following your guideline, Madam Chair, that's the overall reason for the article. Now, the question was asked about, has it been socialized among the voters? And the article has been the subject of several Nantucket-based sites, Facebook sites, where the support is clear from the broad set of commentators. The Yankee reporter, Dean Geddes, has been corresponding with me about the various aspects of the article. And I reached out and met with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, where we discussed the proposed article for more than 30 minutes. The article has support from community organizations such as the Nantucket Conservation Association. And when I discussed this at the Civic Lead annual meeting, other neighborhood representatives expressed support for it, as have the several hundred individuals who signed the required petitions to have the article put on the ATM warrant. Now, I only had to submit 4 of those petitions because you didn't need that many signatures, but a lot of people signed them. As far as any research that supports this article, well, many communities have already made sidewalks off limits to motorized devices. Now, towns with dedicated bike paths, and there aren't that many around that I could find, but I did find some ranging from towns in Southeast Mass and towns in the Mid-South and out West. They also restrict these devices from being on the bike paths. And in Europe, where bicycles and these personalized motorized vehicles are a major means of transportation, these devices aren't allowed on sidewalks or walking paths. They share the roads with cars and trucks safely. As to any costs that would be associated to the town, I don't think it would present any significant costs other than the usual effort in making the public aware of the requirements of any article that passes a town meeting and that affects the public. This includes methods such as social media, the town manager's report, or other town website notices using social media. Now, perhaps it could involve some informational signs along the multi-use path, which could be fabricated at the existing DPW sign shop. As to how this would be funded, I don't think there would be any additional costs. Just as similar efforts were not additional costs, for example, with the adding of flushable wipes to the items not distributed on the island. A key question you asked about was enforcement. and enforcement is intended to be entirely passive. By that, I mean it's akin to the enforcement of regulations for excessive noise, outdoor lighting left on after 10 o'clock, treated pool water being discharged on the ground, pool fencing violations, fertilizer issues. Enforcements of incidents of impacts between bikes and motorized personal devices and pedestrians are often difficult due to the timing of the incident and how long it takes for the arrival of an enforcement person. By the time they arrive, the victim is already aided and the rider has already moved on. As we learned when my 4-year-old daughter was hit, and also when I was hit. Once we got my granddaughter to the doctor for a few stitches on her chin and got the scrapes bandaged, we reported the incident to the dispatcher, who asked if the person who hit us was identified or still there. The answer, of course, was no, and it was decided that the incident did not warrant a full police response. Will any additional staffing be required for the town to enforce this? No. And there are no cost estimates for it now. The big question that I think needs to be addressed, have affected communities or constituencies been consulted? And the answer is yes. The proposed article was sent in draft form to the town administration and town council before I even processed it to the town clerk. Town administration forwarded that draft copy to the police chief, who offered concerns about enforcement and having these motorized devices on the roads where they might crash. Town council, at the time, opined by email that there was no real issue with the article. However, he shared the chief's concerns. Of course, all of these motorized personal devices are already on the roads because there aren't sidewalks and bike paths along the sides of all of our roads. We have more miles of roads without sidewalks or bike paths or multi-use paths than the few that have them. I mentioned that I reached out to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and asked to present the article to them. They graciously put me on their agenda for their recent meeting in November. We reviewed the article and discussed it for more than 30 minutes. At the end of that time, they said they understood the article, its basis in safety, and in updating the list of personalized motorized devices. And it will apparently be the subject of a future agenda item for them. Are there people that oppose this? I suspect there are. The only opposition I've had, and had the opportunity to visit with those folks and discuss the article, has been from a few e-bike riders who want so-called slower rated e-bikes to be exempted. Now, e-bikes fall under three categories: level 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 is kind of slow. They only go up to 12 miles an hour. Getting hit by something going 12 miles an hour, let me tell you, it hurts. But anyway, those folks that wanted the slower rated e-bikes to be exempted because they suggested it's unfair to include, for example, pedal assisted motorized bikes because they don't go really fast, as well as the lowest speed of these e-bikes. I researched this, and I even discussed this with an old friend of the island, Sarah Octay, who you may recall worked here at our field office and is now at the—
Bruce.
I'm almost done.
I'm actually going to draw a line under this now, because as I said, we're not going to make a motion tonight, and I appreciate you going through the guideline, but going through the guideline is more appropriate on the night that we make a recommendation about it. I was hoping more for a top level, here's why it's important, here's why I'm doing it. And I'd like to ask John Giorgio to give us his input, and then I'll ask my finance committee members if they have any quick questions for you, because we're only on number 3 and it's 10 of 5 and we still have 23 more to potentially discuss. So I am going to,
Okay, that's fine. I did have one thing for the town council, though, that he might be helpful on, and it'll just take a minute.
oh, just let John Giorgio speak first, please, Bruce, and then I'll let you ask John whatever question you have. John, if you wouldn't mind weighing in?
Yes, thank you, Denise. I don't have any particular comments about this article. I think it presents policy questions that the town needs to think about. A lot of this can be regulated by the Board of Selectmen through traffic regulations. And the existing bylaw does contemplate a role for the custodial board of the town property to grant permission. I think that would be done through traffic regulations.
Okay, thank you. Bruce, do you have a quick question for John?
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of attorneys about this to see where I stood, and a couple of them said without an amendment, they said it's possible the town could be liable for passively allowing these motorized vehicles to operate freely on bike paths where people are walking, causing injury. And they clearly said it's an issue that could be addressed by the town council, the town's insurance advisor. And one of them suggested that adding these and including bike paths in the prohibition might provide the town with some protection in that regard. But, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I thought that was an interesting observation.
I think unless there's a specific case, I think it's only really speculation. So I think, and John, unless you want to jump in on this, I'm going to move it along.
Very quickly, under the recreational use statute, if the town doesn't charge a fee for use of those bike paths, which you do not, the town is immune from liability. But as with any kind of potential liability, it's an insurance issue, and you manage your risk through maintaining appropriate insurance.
Thank you, John. Okay, Bruce, as with always, I will send you an email, hopefully at least 7 days in advance for the next time we want you to come and talk to us about this article. So thank you for your attendance tonight.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the time. It's a serious safety issue, and I appreciate you giving me the 20 minutes that I was allowed to speak. Thank you.
So, okay, you're welcome. All right, happy holidays to you, Bruce. Yes.
Jill has her emails.
Jill, you have a question?
Yes, just a quick question. Do we have any speed limit on the bike paths now? I think we don't, but I can't remember.
I would not have the answer to that. Maybe Libby does. And I would also offer they're a bike path. So I don't know any bike paths ever that have speed limits, but maybe we do.
I think it was discussed before when we had talked about some other bike issues in the past.
Libby, is there?
I don't believe we have any, and we already get complaints that we have too many signs on the bike paths as it is.
Right, I remember that. Denise?
Yes, Joanna?
I just have one comment. In John Giorgio's analysis of the articles, he does make a statement here that basically says that changes to the existing bylaw are shown, but in fact, there is no delineation between the existing bylaw and what is being proposed in the article. So.
Madam Chair. That's
Yes, Bruce.
because the article that was reviewed had very poor highlighting. When it was printed in the website, the highlighting didn't show up, which is why I sent John and you folks a properly highlighted one.
I have the unhighlighted version.
Okay.
Oh,
No, we have it. We did get them, Bruce, but again, it's I'm not sure the last minute everybody checked their town emails. So, but I can assure you everyone has gotten it. And also to your prior question to me, no one has to recuse on this e-bike discussion unless they financially benefit from an e-bike business. And as far as I know, none of my finance committee colleagues, and I'm looking at Jeremy, as you're the newest one, have an e-bike business that they are financially benefiting from.
I do not.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so that was to your, I didn't get a chance to email you the answer to that, Bruce. So
Well,
there you go.
thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yes,
And US has her hand raised. She's from just attendees.
okay.
Can I ask a question first?
Yep, before Ann, Peter?
Yeah, just two things. You don't have to answer these now, Bruce. This is something for you to think about for next time. Number one is you talked a lot about how fast the electric bikes go, but you didn't mention how fast the regular bike goes. And when I walk on a bike path or drive my car and watch the bikes, they go pretty fast. So, is it just a matter of having an engine on it, a little motor on it, or is it the electric bike? The second thing is, with all the road problems we've had recently, the accidents, et cetera, you might want to take address the what would happen if all these motorized vehicles were moved from the bike path to the roads. I don't know how you address it, but it's an issue that you might want to look at.
Well, thank you, Peter. I was going to address that a little bit further in my notes, but I'll be happy to address that at the next time I'm invited. I've made a note of your two questions.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Jeremy or Joe, did you have anything you wanted to ask of
No.
Bruce? Okay. Then go ahead, Maria. Ann can.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ann Duez. I am very appreciative of Bruce's initiative because I too have been at the wrong end of being hit on the bike path. However, I have serious concerns because, in fact, these are bike paths and they have bikes on them, as Peter has mentioned, and some of those bikes go extremely fast. So I don't know how you differentiate between non-motorized bicycles that are going along at a 30-mile-an-hour clip and a little scooter that's going along at a 15-mile-an-hour clip. And I'm wondering, I'd like to offer a suggestion, if there might be, Bruce also mentions about passive enforcement. Passive enforcement is fine if you're next to a house where there's noise at 1 a.m. Passive enforcement doesn't work when somebody goes flying past you. So I'm wondering if there might be a role for licensing of these kinds of riding devices, including bicycles, a requirement to have a license plate displayed, because we all know how effective cameras are. If you have an incident, just quickly take a picture and then you can actually report the incident. But I do have a problem with saying it's okay for bikes, which can go really fast, but it's not okay for anything else. So there's a disconnect there that's bothering me.
Thank you, Ann. Maria?
Eric Stephen.
Okay. Eric?
Eric, you're mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
There we go. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said for many, many reasons. And Peter actually, I think, alluded to it best. There were multiple issues. I mean, I've written to the Inky Mirror about people on bicycles, not obeying stop signs, flying through intersections. And personally, I almost hit 3 of them. So there are many things that need to be addressed. I do not think one citizen's warrant looking at a particular issue, as valid as it may be, is, what needs to be done. I think we need to take a look in its entirety at this whole issue of, personalized travel versus, the roads that we have in existence. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. And Bruce, we will see you in the new year. So thank you. Okay, Article 4, Arthur Reed, Affordable and Year-Round Housing Stabilization Fund. Is there anyone in the waiting room?
Arthur Reed is in the, yes,
Okay,
she's muted now.
okay. Hi, Arthur.
Hi, thank you very much. I will be very brief. I know you have a lot on the agenda tonight, and I don't think we need to get into this in great detail. This is basically the same as an article that I submitted 2 years ago, which obtained a substantial majority, but less than the required 2/3 at the 2021 town meeting. this would establish a stabilization fund with 2/3 of the town's receipts from the occupancy tax. And it does require a 2/3 vote, as was the case then, in order to pass. The only difference in the text of the article between what I submitted then and what I'm submitting now is that at that time, I proposed that it be made effective during the next fiscal year. And there was objection taken to that on the basis that the town had already been working on its budget for the following year, and that that would provide difficulty for them. So this time, instead of it being effective in the next fiscal year, 2024, I've proposed that it become effective in 2025. I think there's no question that one of the most important issues, if not the most important issue, facing Nantucket today is the need for affordable and year-round housing for persons who are living year-round on the island and who are not of extremely high income. And therefore, I think that it is important that we use every available method, and this is one that has been used in other communities, to provide as much funding as possible to address the housing crisis that we have. Again, I'll get into this in much more detail when you bring me back, but that's the substance of what we're doing and what we're proposing to do.
Thank you, Arthur. Finance Committee, questions for Arthur? Joanna?
I thought that one of the issues last time was the availability of the funds, and that it didn't really solve the problem because the funds aren't immediately available. Have you done anything to resolve that issue?
If that's directed to me, the point is that this provides the funding. The mechanism for getting the funds out for a particular project can be dealt with. The point is to get the money on the table so that it's available to be used. It may not be in place every time a project comes up, but most of these things require advanced planning, and the appropriate action can be taken in order to bring it forward. Again, we'll get into more detail on that later.
Yeah, I think, Arthur, the issue is the fact that it goes into a stabilization fund, and the stabilization fund has requirements, and I'm looking at Brian as I'm saying this, so I'm going to ask Brian Turbot to stand up and just explain the additional complexities that come with stabilization funds.
I mean, so the mechanics of the article, even if it were to be adopted in the form, would require us to start distributing 67% in from the room occupancy tax, which I would note nowhere in the room occupancy tax does it actually say anything about affordable housing except for the 2 community impact fees, which do have an affordable housing component to them. However, the mechanics would then start requiring us in 2020 fiscal 25 to put money into the stabilization fund. It requires a 2/3 majority to get it out, which would require a town meeting at an annual or town meeting or special town meeting, I suppose. But there'd be nothing available to the Affordable Housing Trust on July 1st of 2024, which would be the beginning of 25, until we had actually started collecting receipts. So it would actually delay their ability to really do anything for almost a full fiscal year.
And Brian, would they then need to come back?
They would have to go to town meeting
every time they wanted to spend the money.
We would have to let them know what was in the fund at the time. And then they would have to put an article on town meeting to authorize the expenditure of the fund, those funds. And it would take a 2/3 majority to get those funds out of the stabilization fund once they were put in.
Right, that's somewhat risky.
Brian, even if authorized by Mr. Reed's article?
Mr. Reed's article, town council can correct me if I'm wrong, all it does is authorize the creation of the special purpose stabilization fund and sets the funding mechanism. The appropriation mechanism is a second step that is required by an annual town meeting subsequent to the creation of it every time we want to take money out of it. So the article itself can't appropriate money out of it. It only directs the money into it. And again, like I said, town council can correct me, but I'm fairly confident that I'm correct.
John, did you want to add anything to what Brian has said?
No, he's absolutely correct, as usual.
Thank you. Um, Okay, thank you. Jill?
Yeah, maybe more directed to Brian, but if anyone can answer, Brian, how many stabilization funds do we have now?
Not many, handful.
Currently, we have the general purpose stabilization fund that was created a while ago. And we have a capital stabilization fund. The only other one that I can recall off the top of my head is the special, well, there's a couple more, I stand corrected. We created a special purpose stabilization fund for other post-employment benefit liabilities, being vacation and sick leave payout when somebody leaves employment of the town. And we did create a special purpose stabilization fund for substance abuse, which previously has been directing the marijuana local option taxes and impact fees into. The airport has created the same OPEB, other post-employment benefit stabilization fund as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total.
Have you ever had any problems getting the money out?
In my 9 years here, the airport has taken money out once. We have never, in the 9 years that I've been here, never taken money out of the two primary stabilization funds that we have, being the general stabilization or the capital stabilization to this point.
Just because you haven't needed them?
Pardon me?
Because you haven't needed it?
Because we haven't needed those for operational reasons, and so we've never actually asked town meeting to appropriate from them, no.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? No? Okay. Thank you, Arthur. And Arthur, on article number 5, zoning map change, as I said earlier on, we will review that after the planning board has made the recommendation.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Article number 6, charter change, town council, town manager form of government. I did hear from Jeff today, and he said that they were not available to come this evening, and I said that they would be invited. Is there anyone online? No, thanks, Maria. Okay, Article 7 is also a zoning map change. I'm assuming John Kane is not on. Thank you. Article number 8 is a zoning bylaw amendment. Again, we'll wait till planning board, but is Campbell on? Okay. Article number 9, bylaw amendment noise. Still no Campbell? Okay. Okay. Number 10, independent HDC administrator. Is Diane on? No. Okay. Hillary told me she's not going to be on Article 11, home rule petition, amend the NP and EDC. Christine Illier, zoning map change. I'm guessing Christine's not here. Again, it's a planning board first. Emily Kilvert, zoning bylaw amendment, short-term rental accessory use. Emily told me she's not going to be here. And again, planning board first. Number 14, Marty McGowan, bylaw amendment, sewer district map change. That will be sewer commissioners. Number 15, bylaw amendment, outdoor lighting. Gail Walker told me she wouldn't be here tonight. Linda Williams, I'm just going to go. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. They're all zoning topics. Going to the planning board first. Is Linda on? Okay. Number 25, Emily Molden, zoning bylaw amendment, pre-existing non-conforming status of lots. I'm assuming Emily's not on. And the same for zoning bylaw amendment, lots created under Massachusetts General Law 4181L. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the citizens warrant article for the annual town meeting 2023. John, is there anything you'd like to share with us before I look for if there's any other business from my colleagues?
In general, or with respect to the articles?
Well, first with respect to the articles, and then we'll move past that with respect to the articles, John, and then we'll move past that.
I think there are some zoning articles that are going to need some careful consideration, but we can wait for, obviously, the planning board to weigh in, which would be the appropriate approach.
Okay, thank you. I will get to other things though, John, in a minute. Let me go to committee reports first. So Joanna, CRC.
CRC is moving along, and we did learn this week that there will be money in the cannabis grant fund.
Okay.
So that was positive. Thank you, Brian, for letting us know that. So yes, we're in the midst of the hearings, and it's all going well.
Okay, thank you. Coastal resiliency?
Coastal resiliency is also all moving along nicely.
Okay.
No real update.
Okay, Peter?
The senior center and our Island Home Combination Committee, we are now actively studying other towns to come up with some ideas to go forward. And I think we're back in business on trying to figure out a way to get our new senior center built where our Island Home is, and move our Island Home to Sherburne Commons property. And that's I'm excited about that because it was really stagnant for a year and a half or something like that. Short-term rentals, I think everybody is, we can read the newspaper. We had the public meeting last week. We had 100, well, we actually have 200.
It was Monday.
What's today?
Today's Thursday.
It was Monday. We had originally, about 220 people that had signed up. We had 160 some odd that showed up, which was pretty good. And we're digesting that information. And we don't meet again until the 17th of January. And hopefully by that time, we will receive some data that we've been asking for since we started put the committee together in October. So that's where we are.
Thank you. And again, thank you from everybody on Finance Committee for your effort in this respect, Peter. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Peter, I was just curious on the senior center and on the Island Home Center. What are the demographics? How many people are actually going to use both? Do we know that?
Well,
And how is that going to change over?
Joe might have a point here, but as far as I know, on the senior center right now, we have, I think, something like 300 members.
Mhm.
And, that's not, and there's many, many more seniors. Seniors is probably the largest growing part of the population on Nantucket. So I think if we had an appropriate senior center, that's what we're talking about, rather than one room, which is essentially what we have now, it would be used to a greater extent than it even is now. I mean, we need the space to do something proper. In terms of our Island Home, that's something that was voted on by the town a while ago, was it 2 years ago?
We're licensed for 45 beds. The census typically runs between 33 to 40 beds at a time. So, but we're licensed for 45. And the town has voted repeatedly to maintain our Island Home. I mean, to the point where, was it 3 years ago they voted the $5 million override? 2 years ago. So the permanent override to the budget to support the shortfall in income versus expenses.
Just last question. Do we know on that census of 33 to 45 usage, where that is likely to go with the demographics of the island?
So
do we have that information or?
So yes, we do have that information. Prior to Peter being involved in this, I was involved in a lot of our Island Home work group topics. And there is a lot of change, and Joe probably can even speak to this as well as I can. There is a lot of change in the care facility, in the care community for elderly people, and to where more people are trying to stay in home. How much are we going to need this facility? Could it also do short-term rehabilitation as an example? Because if you, for example, need short-term rehabilitation, you can't do it on island. You have to go off island for it. I think there is some ability to do it at our Island Home. And so it's all those kinds of combinations, Jeremy, that people are looking at all the time.
And converting to single rooms. Right
Yes.
now it's double rooms.
They're all double rooms, so they'd be converted, exactly. So, Joe, did you want to add anything to
No, not really, it's all.
So, but yes, that is part of every time, at least every work group I was in, discussion on our Island Home, it always started out with here's what the census looks like, here's what's projected in the next 10 years.
I just never seen that data. I was curious.
Yeah, it's I'm sure it's on the website, because there's all sorts of, on the town website, you can find nearly everything, so.
I
Including,
might have some information too, and if I do, I'll send it to you.
Okay. By the way, just as an aside, using one of those homes for the short-term rehabilitation, I've seen that done in Connecticut many times to great advantage to everybody.
Good. And it's also quite economic for the,
Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about in New Canaan, there's the Waveney Center.
No, I meant what you said, using one of those homes here. I assume you meant a particular
Island
home
home.
here.
No,
You meant
oh,
our island home.
I'm sorry. I meant using a facility
Yeah.
for extended nursing care to also be for rehabilitation nursing care. And I've just seen it, had experience, not with myself, but with parents, and seeing it in a number of Connecticut towns.
Good, thank
Great.
you. Jill, did you want to report on the capital program committee?
Yes, I think we had probably not our final meeting, but we had our final votes today to confirm and move forward what we recommend to the committee. So the report writing will start, and yeah, hopefully that'll get wrapped up next month.
Great, thank you. Joe, you're on the
Solid waste.
solid waste.
I have participated in, I think, about 4 meetings now with Libby and George Aronson, who's our consultant, the town's consultant for solid waste. I've learned more than I ever wanted to know about plastics, glass, paper, waste streams, PFAS. I don't need to bore everybody with that. I think the interesting thing that was noted today, actually by Libby, is that we have about 2 years to kind of decide what we're going to do, because the contract with Waste Options expires on or about December 1st, 2024, or maybe it's 25, but we have a year to sort of to turn over. So, I think there's, it seems to me the town is pretty well decided to take over the operation of the landfill from Waste Options and hire some agent to actually operate it, but it will be managed by the town as opposed to by Waste Options. I believe that's the decision the select board and the town seem to be moving towards. And then beyond that, I think, there are some structural things that have to be decided, because we have, I think, 3 to 4 years of landfill capacity left before virtually everything has to go off island. So all these sort of factors and structural issues have to be sort of, woven into the decision of operating the landfill ourselves. So.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now we're on, our next meeting is Monday, January 9th at 4 p.m. Actually, Joe will be chairing that meeting. I won't be here. I'm just coming back that day and won't get back in time. Other business, John, did you want to make any helpful comments?
I won't be at the January 9th meeting either.
Should never ask a lawyer if he wants to make any comments. I think I'm all set. I'll be around, obviously, as a resource for the Finance Committee as you move through a deeper dive into the petitioned articles, and I'd be happy to assist with the drafting of any special motions that you would like to make. I've done that in the past, and I'm happy to help you again.
Thank you, John. As always, we very much appreciate your help and your insights and getting us to the right path on these topics, because some of them are well beyond my pay grade to understand simply, and you make that easy. Okay. Before I make a motion to adjourn, happy holidays for everyone.
Yeah.
Nice to see those of you in person who are in person. And to Curtis, you're our star audience. It's really, and of course to everyone online and watching at home, thank you very much. We wish you all a happy and healthy holiday season, and we look forward to getting into deep dives starting in January. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn? Second, thank you. Roll call, don't forget. Joanna?
Yes, aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Jill?
Hi.
And Denise, aye. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good work.
We usually don't get much applause, Curtis, I have to tell you.